You had your chance. You feared us when we came in peace. You spat on our kindness. Now we leave you to the silence, and we suggest you pray that silence lasts. As the last human ship disappeared into the abyss of deep space, an uneasy stillness settled over the Galactic Council. The ancient empires had always feared humanity's potential, but they had never truly considered the alternative. A universe without humans. And that was when the disappearances began. The chamber pulsed with artificial light, sterile and cold, its walls stretching impossibly high, as if designed to dwarf those who stood beneath them. The assembled delegates of the Galactic Council, over a dozen species, each adorned in their ceremonial garb, sat in judgment, their glares sharp, their expressions unreadable. At the center, Elias Vance stood alone. A human. The last one who would ever stand in this place. Commander Elias Vance? The High Arbiter's voice rang out, its tone drenched in condescension. You were summoned here to negotiate. Yet your kind arrives armed with ultimatums. It is no longer enough to tolerate your presence. Humanity must be contained. Vance's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Contained? He exhaled sharply, his fingers flexing against the cold metal table before him. You mean conquered? A murmur swept through the chamber. The Vrak ambassador, a towering reptilian with gleaming emerald scales, slammed a clawed fist against his podium. We have been patient with your kind, but you defy the order of the galaxy. You expand too fast. You build too quickly. You interfere in conflicts that are not your concern. This cannot continue. Funny, Vance said, tilting his head. We seem to recall saving your asses from the Dronathai war fleets. You begged for our help. And we bled for you. But now that you no longer need us, we're a threat. He scoffed. Typical. You misunderstand. The Arbiter continued, voice measured, as if addressing a feral beast. We have allowed humanity to exist beyond its means for too long. The Galactic Council has decreed that your militarization must end. Your fleets will be decommissioned. Your colonies will be placed under supervision. Your weapons research will cease immediately. This is not a negotiation. A deep silence followed. Vance sighed, rolling his shoulders. So that's it, then. All the treaties, the goodwill, the alliances, they meant nothing. You were never meant to last. The Vrak ambassador sneered. Your place is not among us, human. You should have known your reach exceeded your grasp. Vance let the words settle before slowly nodding. He let out a dry chuckle, a low, humorless sound that sent a shiver through the chamber. You don't get it, he murmured, shaking his head. You've made the worst mistake possible. The Arbiter narrowed its multiple eyes. And what mistake is that? Vance met its gaze, and for the first time, the air in the chamber changed. Gone was the mask of diplomacy, the carefully measured expressions. What replaced it was something colder. Something lethal. You thought we'd kneel. A flicker of something primal, fear, uncertainty, passed through the council members. You saw us come to the stars, dragging ourselves up from our little blue rock, and you thought you could tame us. Vance continued, his voice low, sharp. You mistook our patience for weakness. Our offers of peace for submission. You thought we were just another species to slot into your stagnant empire. The Vrak snarled. You speak as though humanity has a choice. You will comply or what? Vance interrupted. His voice was no longer diplomatic. It was cutting. Final. You'll kill us? Enslave us? Please. If you had the strength to wipe us out, you would have done it already. But you didn't. Because even you fear what happens when you push humanity too far. You are outnumbered. The Arbiter snapped, though there was an edge to its voice now. Outmatched. If you resist, you will be extinguished? Vance finished, raising a brow. Then do it. He spread his arms wide mockingly. Go ahead. Pull the trigger. Silence. A hesitation. Vance leaned forward, voice lowering to a whisper, yet somehow more deafening than any of their proclamations. The fact that I'm still standing here means you know exactly what happens if you make that call. The chamber was deathly still. Vance exhaled slowly. "We tried," he said, shaking his head. "We really tried. But you? You never wanted peace. You wanted us broken. Tamed." He stepped back, looking over the assembled council with something almost like pity. "You should have left us alone." The Arbiter recovered, its composure hardening. "Humanity has until the next cycle to comply. If you refuse, your existence will be erased from the stars." Vance smirked. "No, Arbiter. It's you who should be afraid of what comes next." He tapped the insignia on his wrist. Instantly, every light in the chamber flickered. A ripple passed through the air, a silent, imperceptible signal. Across the station, security forces crumpled to the ground. Weapons deactivated. Systems crashed. The council panicked. "What have you done?" Vance turned on his heel, walking toward the massive chamber doors as they hissed open for him. The human delegation followed, their expressions unreadable, their movements swift. Vance paused at the threshold, glancing back one last time. "You wanted us gone," he said softly, almost amused. "Wish granted." The chamber doors slammed shut behind him. And across the galaxy, at that precise moment, every human colony, outpost, and fleet vanished into the void. The void had never felt so vast. Across the galaxy, entire star systems once teeming with human trade, technology, and presence had gone silent. No distress signals. No broadcasts. No movement. It was as if humanity had never been there at all. The Galactic Council convened again, this time in fear, their confidence eroding with each passing hour. The station's atmosphere had changed. There was an absence, a hollowness that none of them could quite place. Their departure was unexpected. The Vrak ambassador grumbled, claws tapping against his seat. But it changes nothing. Without human intervention, our empires can finally reassert dominance. Their technology, their influence, it will fade into irrelevance. A quiet scoff broke the uneasy silence. Grand Strategist Corrin of the Talarian Dominion leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "And yet, something feels wrong, doesn't it?" His voice was smooth, deliberate. "They didn't run. They didn't beg. They left on their own terms." The Arbiter remained motionless, many eyes unblinking. "Are you suggesting humanity's withdrawal was a tactic?" Corrin's mandibles clicked in something resembling a smirk. "What do we actually know about humanity?" He turned to the chamber. "They arrived in this galaxy late. Advanced quickly. Too quickly. Yet even when we placed restrictions, threw obstacles in their way, they adapted, overcame. They don't think like us. We planned for centuries, they planned for the next fight." The silence in the room deepened. "What if," Corrin continued, voice lower now, "what if they're not retreating? What if they're preparing?" The words sent a ripple through the delegates. The idea was preposterous. Impossible. And yet, a deep chime rang out across the station, signaling an incoming transmission. The council's vast holoscreens flared to life. Static at first, then a voice, calm, unwavering, and unmistakable. "Greetings, esteemed members of the Galactic Council. This is Elias Vance." The temperature seemed to drop. "I imagine, by now, you're wondering where we've gone. You expected desperation. Chaos. Perhaps even surrender." There was a pause, measured. "You expected wrong." The Vrak ambassador snarled. "This is a bluff. Nothing more." The transmission continued undeterred. "We tried peace. We tried negotiation. We tried playing by your rules. You made it clear there was never going to be a seat for us at your table. You feared what we could become. So you chose betrayal. Oppression. You believed we would break under the weight of your decree." Corrin's mandibles clicked together. He had seen wars unfold through decades of strategy, but something about the tone unsettled him. There was no rage. No bluster. Just quiet certainty. "We are no longer part of your system. We have stepped beyond your reach. You will search for us, try to track us, wonder where we've gone. But let me save you the trouble." A new screen flashed open, A live feed from the Zarkvath Armada, the largest war fleet in the known galaxy. What they saw turned their blood to ice. The entire fleet, over 10,000 warships, each a behemoth of destruction, was gone. Not destroyed. Not scattered. Simply missing. The vast armada had disappeared from their designated sector without a trace. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even the Vrak ambassador's confidence faltered. What have you done? Vance's voice remained eerily composed. You called us a threat. A species that needed to be contained. But let me tell you something. The static in the transmission crackled slightly, as though the void itself held its breath. You never contained us. A ripple of energy crackled through the council chambers. Lights flickered. Holograms distorted. Security AI systems stuttered, their routines scrambled. From the moment we stepped into the stars, we have been watching. Learning. We studied your fleets, your defenses, your networks. And now, while you sit there scrambling to make sense of it all, I want you to ask yourselves one thing. Corin barely whispered, but the words felt like a death knell. Where are they? The transmission paused for just a moment before Vance answered, his voice lowering into something almost like a whisper. Closer than you think. The screen cut to black. The chamber erupted into chaos. They've developed stealth technology beyond our detection. No fleet moves without leaving traces. This is impossible. Is it war? Are they preparing for war? The Arbiter slammed the table, demanding silence. Slowly, the panic faded, but the unease remained, clinging to the air like smoke after a fire. We need to find them, the Arbiter said firmly. We need to re-establish control before it's too late. Another chime. Another broadcast. This time, it wasn't from Vance. It was an emergency signal from Goric Prime, a heavily fortified stronghold, home to one of the most formidable war academies in the known galaxy. The transmission was filled with static and flickering lights. Shouting. The camera feed spun wildly before stabilizing on the face of a Goric general. Blood streaked his fur, his breathing ragged. They're here, he gasped, eyes wide with something the Council had never seen on his kind before, terror. They came out of nowhere. We never saw them coming. Who? The Arbiter demanded. The general's throat bobbed. The humans. A metallic groan filled the transmission as the ceiling behind him collapsed inward. The brief flicker of the feed showed something, dark silhouettes, moving with inhuman precision, slipping through the ruins of the academy as if they were shadows given form. The general's eyes darted to the screen, as if seeing them watching. His lips barely moved before the feed cut. Run! Silence. For the first time in Galactic Council history, no one spoke. No one moved. Corin exhaled slowly, shaking his head. You fools! His voice was barely above a whisper. You didn't push them away. You forced them to evolve. The Arbiter, unblinking, finally spoke. Find them. But deep down, they all knew the truth. They had spent centuries fearing what humanity could become. And now, they were about to find out. The council chamber was silent, the weight of realization settling over them like a suffocating fog. No one spoke, no one dared to. The galaxy had known war, had seen civilizations rise and fall, but never before had an enemy disappeared so completely, only to re-emerge as something unstoppable. The transmission from Goric Prime was still fresh in their minds. A fortress world gone. Not bombarded, not occupied, erased. The Arbiter's voice was a cold whisper. What do they want? No one had an answer. Corin exhaled sharply, tapping his claws against the table. You're all asking the wrong question. He let his gaze sweep across the gathered delegates, lingering on their unease, their growing fear. The real question is, what have they become? A deep chime echoed through the room, sending a jolt through every being present. Another transmission. Not from a war front. Not from an ambassador. It was coming from inside their own network. The display screens flared to life. There was no visual this time, only the smooth, measured voice of Elias Vance. We warned you. No one breathed. We offered peace. You denied it. We extended our hands. You shackled them. Corin's mandibles clenched. He could hear it in Vance's voice. This wasn't a warning anymore. It was a verdict. We left not out of fear, but out of necessity. You feared what we could do under pressure. A pause, deliberate. And now? Now you will learn exactly what happens when humanity has nothing left to lose. A flicker of movement on the screens. It was data, raw, streaming code, moving so fast even the most advanced Council AI struggled to interpret it. A Talarian technician frantically worked his console, his crest flaring. They're inside our security grid. Corin shot to his feet. Cut the feed. The technician's claws flew across the controls. I can't. They're overriding our failsafes. The chamber lights dimmed. Then, a new image filled the screens. It was a map of the galaxy. Every major empire, every stronghold, every fleet, marked in glowing sigils of power. And then, one by one, the symbols vanished. Gasps rippled through the chamber. The Arbiter leaned forward, voice dangerously low. What is this? Vance's voice returned, steady as ever. A demonstration. Another sigil flickered. Then disappeared. The Vrak ambassador's eyes widened. That's our Eastern Fleet. Gone, Vance confirmed. They never even knew we were there. The symbols continued to vanish. Entire fleets, military outposts, trade hubs, erased as if they had never existed. Panic overtook the chamber. How are they doing this? They can't have moved this fast. Impossible! No fleet has that range. Corin stared at the display, something cold settling into his gut. They aren't moving ships. His voice was barely above a whisper. They're moving the battlefield. The chamber doors slammed open, security forces rushing in. One of them, a high-ranking officer, was already speaking, breathless with urgency. The humans have deployed something. We don't know what. Our war fleets are losing entire sectors without a single engagement. The Arbiter turned sharply. What do you mean losing? The officer swallowed hard. They're just gone. Entire flotillas, outposts, garrisons, every asset we had in contested space has ceased to exist. And there's no wreckage. No bodies. No sign they were ever there. A frozen silence. They're rewriting the war. Corin murmured, barely able to comprehend it. They're not fighting us. They're removing us from the equation. The screens flickered again, and suddenly, an image appeared. A planet. It was Tarsus V, a council-controlled world known for its naval yards, where some of the most powerful warships in the galaxy were produced. Vance's voice returned, softer this time, but no less absolute. You believed we needed war fleets. You believed we fought like you. A pause. You were wrong. A ripple ran through the image, like static distorting reality itself. Then the entire planet flickered. And just like that, it was gone. No explosion. No impact. No debris. The world, and everything on it, had simply ceased to be. Gasps turned into raw, unfiltered terror. What is this? This isn't possible. They just erased an entire planet. The Arbiter's many eyes were locked onto the now empty space where Tarsus V had been. His voice came in a whisper. How? Vance answered without hesitation. We moved beyond you. The weight of those words hit harder than any weapon ever could. We watched. We learned. And then, when you turned on us, we understood one simple truth. The map flickered again. Another planet vanished. You don't deserve to be at the top anymore. Fear. True, unfiltered fear gripped the chamber. This is extermination! The Vrak ambassador roared, slamming a clawed fist against the table. No, Vance corrected calmly. This is evolution. The connection cut. The chamber erupted. Some delegates screamed, others fled. Commands were shouted to mobilize whatever forces they had left. It didn't matter. Because deep down, they all knew the truth. The humans had left them behind. and the galaxy was no longer theirs. The air in the council chamber had turned cold, though no temperature had changed. Fear had seeped into the walls, settled into every breath taken by those present. The silence wasn't just a pause, it was suffocation. A moment stretched so tight it might snap at any second. The arbiter's voice, once a declaration of authority, barely rose above a whisper. "How do we stop them?" No one answered. The Vrak ambassador hunched forward, claws gripping the table hard enough to dent the metal. "We cannot be negotiating with ghosts," he snarled. "This is an illusion. Some kind of human deception." Corin turned his gaze to him, slow and deliberate. "They erased an entire planet." The reptilian scales flared in irritation. "A trick. A planetary cloaking device, mass evacuation. We've sent scouts." The technician's voice trembled as he spoke. "Tarsus V is gone. The star system is intact, the gravitational balance hasn't changed, but the planet simply isn't there." More silence. "They've rewritten physics." Corin's voice was barely above a murmur. "Or worse. They've stepped beyond it." A chime. Another broadcast. The third in a matter of hours, yet it might as well have been a knife slipping between ribs. The screens flared, and Vance's voice returned, steady as ever. "You are now beginning to understand." Every eye in the chamber locked onto the display. "We once thought as you did. War was firepower, territory, control. But war was never about ships. Not about planets. Not about soldiers or weapons. War has only ever been about dominance." A pause. A heavy one. "And humanity?" His voice barely changed, yet somehow it cut. "We've learned a new way to dominate." The map returned. Another world flickered. Then, with a ripple of distortion, it was gone. Gasps. A stifled cry. Someone collapsed into their seat. The arbiter straightened, voice shaking. "This is genocide." "No," Vance corrected. "This is correction." The words sent a ripple of panic through the council. The Talarian Dominion's grand strategist slammed his fist against the table. "You speak as if you're gods. You're not. You're still human, still made of flesh, still mortal. And mortals can die." The static in the broadcast flickered for a moment. When Vance spoke again, the temperature seemed to drop further. "Then come and kill us." No one responded. Vance continued unhurried. "You misunderstand what's happening. We are not your enemies. We are not invaders. We are not here to rule." Another pause. "We are simply moving forward. We gave you a chance to come with us. You rejected it. So now? We leave you to the stagnation you chose." The map flickered again. Another planet vanished. "We will not burn your worlds. We will not fight your wars. We will not sit at your table. But understand this." The screens flickered once more. For the first time, the display shifted, not a map, not a message. A view from orbit. The true terror finally revealed itself. A fleet. No. Not a fleet. Something more. It wasn't ships in formation. It wasn't an armada prepared for battle. The things floating in the blackness of space were beyond what the mind could immediately comprehend. No rigid hulls, no engine trails. They shimmered, distorted, dark against the void, yet somehow more than darkness itself. One moved. It didn't accelerate. Didn't turn. It shifted, as if reality had momentarily forgotten where it was supposed to be. Gasps rippled through the chamber. The Vrak ambassador took a step back, as if the image itself could reach through the screen. Vance's voice was quiet, but it carried finality. "If you seek us, you will not find us. If you fight us, you will not see us coming. If you try to stop us..." Another pause. "You won't even realize that you failed." The image flickered out. The connection was severed. A heavy silence followed. The chamber was no longer a place of governance. It was a tomb. "They've ascended," someone whispered. "Haven't they?" Corin closed his eyes. "No." Everyone turned. He inhaled deeply, mandibles clicking, before exhaling. They haven't descended. His gaze lifted, settling on the blank screen where Vance's voice had just been. They've left us behind. The chamber remained deathly silent, save for the flickering of emergency displays. Delegates who had once spoken with arrogance and certainty now sat motionless, their gazes locked on the empty screen where Vance's voice had just faded. The void had never felt so near, so inevitable. The Arbiter inhaled slowly, trying to steady the weight pressing down on his multiple lungs. We need. He stopped himself. Even now, after everything, his instinct had been to say control. But there was no controlling this. He adjusted. We need a response. The VRAC ambassador exhaled sharply, claws scraping against the surface of the council table. A response? His voice barely concealed the panic brewing beneath. You saw what they did. They erased entire fleets, planets, without so much as a battle. You think there's a response to that? Corrin leaned forward, his mandibles clicking softly. We must understand the nature of their power. The ambassador scoffed. What power? They didn't develop a weapon. They abandoned logic, reality itself. And we let them. He gestured sharply toward the now blank display. We should have wiped them out when we had the chance. Corrin's gaze didn't waver. Would we have succeeded? The ambassador's jaw tightened, but he had no answer. The Arbiter spoke again, measured, deliberate. What do we know? What has changed about humanity? A technician hesitated before speaking, voice quiet but clear. It's not just technology. He adjusted his interface, bringing up the limited data recovered from recent encounters. Their fleets, if you can call them that, move without gravitational displacement. They don't emit heat signatures. They phase in and out of real space without traditional warp lanes. Our predictive models can't track them. They are, he swallowed, unknowable. The Talarian strategist straightened. So they've transcended conventional warfare. Fine. But even if they've changed, they are still human. There must be a way to engage. A flicker of static interrupted the conversation. A transmission. But not from Vance. The Arbiter turned to the technician, who was already scanning the source. The officer's throat bobbed. It's from our own deep space monitoring relay. The feed clicked on. No visuals. No introduction. Just a broken voice, panicked, unraveling. This is Station Theta 4. We've detected anomalies across all border systems. Shadows where there shouldn't be. Space itself moving. Ships vanishing the moment they leave port. We tried to send scouts, but they... A sharp intake of breath. We never lost their signals. They just stopped. No distress calls. No wreckage. It's like something reached into reality and removed them. Another voice in the background, equally frantic. It's not ships. It's not ships. They aren't moving through space. They are. The feed cut out. The chamber filled with the suffocating weight of uncertainty. The Arbiter's many eyes darted toward Corrin. Your assessment. Corrin exhaled through his mandibles. If they are moving outside our laws of physics, then we are not dealing with war in any conventional sense. There is no front line. No battlefield. No warships. They do not attack. They do not conquer. They just erase. The VRAC ambassador's voice sharpened. And what does that mean for us? A heavy pause. Corrin lifted his gaze. It means we have already lost. The weight of the words crushed the chamber. Another chime. Another message. This time, it wasn't from a relay. It was from inside the station. The technician paled, fingers hovering over the controls. We didn't open this channel. The displays flickered, distorted, but no image came through. Just sound. Elias Vance's voice, slow and deliberate. We have no quarrel with those who do not stand against us. The Arbiter's throat tightened. And those who do? A pause. They cease to stand at all. The transmission ended itself, not disconnected, not cut. Just gone, as if it had never been sent in the first place. The arbiter straightened, forcing steadiness into his frame. We must re-establish contact. Open negotiations. Offer terms. The VRAC ambassador slammed a fist into the table. Are you deaf? They do not negotiate. They left us behind. We are nothing to them now. His claws twitched against the surface. They were always dangerous, but now? They are something else entirely. The chamber felt smaller. The arbiter turned toward Corin. Then what do you propose? Corin inhaled deeply, eyes unwavering. We prepare. For war? Corin shook his head. For irrelevance. The chamber fell into silence, and in that silence, the delegates understood. This was not about survival. Not about treaties, surrender, or even resistance. This was about something far more terrifying. Humanity had moved beyond them. And the galaxy was no longer theirs.